Welcome to this next episode of YouTube. We're featuring some following behavior, and there's three primary things that we look for when we see following behavior. Typically, this is a dominance-related interaction. So here we see Aidan approaching Denali, who's on top of the den. Denali's tail is wagging, kind of a little bit interested, and some people theorize that the tail wag is, it's usually social, but in some cases it's maybe a little bit of a conflict. And here we're seeing a little bit more aggression, and what we're looking for is tail posture, meaning straight back is usually a little bit more aggressive. Straight up in the air, or a T1 tail over the back, is usually a little bit more dominant. Second thing we're looking at is hackles, and Denali's showing some hackle response and Aidan's not. Hackle response is a little bit of an involuntary response to an adrenaline rush or intensity, and so if Denali's feeling a little more intimidated by Aidan, which is the purpose of following, he's going to show the hackle response. The other thing we look for is the ear posture. Notice how Aidan's in the back, his ears are pricked forward, and Denali's ears are back and off to the side a little bit. That shows a little bit more intimidation. As you see Aidan and Denali come around the pond, you see Denali's tail pick up into a little bit of a T1 tail posture as he runs, and he can run faster than Aidan. He gets a little bit more confidence, and then he faces off Aidan and does a little bit of a bark and a tail wag, and then kind of keeps on going. This is probably stimulated by the temperature. We had an evening temperature of about 14 degrees, and certainly this time of the year is when testosterone is increasing, so it's a little bit of a active dominance with, again, one individual following the other, intimidating them a little bit to show some dominance, but for the most part it's actually pretty mild-mannered. This is not unusual for young 3-year-old wolves to posture like this, and you can see here in this clip that we did drain the pond for the winter. They still have 2 water heaters that are active all winter long, and those are one adjacent to the fence and one built right into the enclosure next to the pond, and so they have plenty of water. It's just that the pond is not deep enough the lines are not deep enough to keep them from freezing in the wintertime, so we usually drain those until the winter. So, like I said, you can see the breath there. This is a typical fall morning here in northern Minnesota. And so we're seeing them, after that little bit of chasing scene, it might be 15-20 minutes that they chase, and then they kind of go about resting either on the greeting rock or on the dens. And wolf care is still in the enclosure at this time, and so there's a little bit of posturing around wolf care. But you'll notice the Working for Wolves crew did manage to get straw in all the dens, and they really do seek that out. Again, in the wild, wolves obviously would be looking for areas maybe with some leaves or leaf litter or something like that, not necessarily needing the kind of care that we give here in captivity, but because in the wild, as it snows, they get a lot of fresh snow that gives them insulating value. In captivity, you have a lot of confinement, and so a lot of compaction, and so the snow loses its insulating value. So it's typical for us all winter long to give a comfortable bed of straw to the wolves. And so, as I said, we are in with wolf care, and so there's going to be a lot of posturing, a lot of interest in the wolves coming and approaching and trying to get greeted. The filming is usually in direct conflict with the wolves' desire for social interaction, so they'll approach and try to get a greeting. When we are using cameras, we tend not to give them a lot of social interaction because we don't want them to grab the tools from our hands, so that results in them going back to what they were doing when we came in, which is following each other around. And again, I'm noticing there, actually Aidan's ears were back a little bit, and it takes a time out to come and greet the wolf care staff. But this kind of thing, like I say, it's not certainly not a fear-based response from Denali. A little intimidated, but not fear-based. His tail's up pretty high. Now, what's interesting is that when these guys start getting a little bit excitable and certainly doing some of this chasing behavior, that's Shadow responding in the retirement enclosure. He knows just by the sound of them that they're up to something, and especially when Denali barks, barking is a little bit of a threat display, and that's going to trigger Shadow into a howl, and oftentimes they'll stop and listen to him. May not respond, but they'll stop and listen to him. So this is a good clip to see the agility of Denali, much more agile than Aidan. And as I said, this might go on 15 or 20 minutes, but if we feel it's too intense, that's when we'll give a distraction. And so that this morning that we filmed this, we actually did give some moose bones to be able to give them a little bit of a distraction away from each other, and they settle down. Basically, they chewed on their moose bones, and later on just kind of rested, and it wasn't anything to it. So these kind of testing things and interactions, again, are natural wolf behavior, and there's certainly something that we do see more often in the wintertime. Now, Grizzer, who doesn't have anyone to chase, will still chase along with the rest of the wolves, and so even though he's by himself and he's greeting the wolf care staff there, when the wolves get excited, he gets excited, meaning when the wolves in the other enclosures. So he still gets to chase even though he's by himself, and he goes through the motions and does the same kind of behavior. So we were filming in the back of Grizzer's enclosure and just kind of checking things out, seeing if he'd had any more digging, and really kind of just overall spending time with him. And we did notice something a little bit unusual, and there's a red squirrel going down a hole inside of Grizzer's enclosure. So we did notice that, and he didn't, but that squirrel would have come right into the retired exhibit, so they may have picked up on it. Shortly after that, Grizzer goes into a little bit of a chase with the retirees on the other side. So other than that, Grizzer's doing really good. A lot of hair growth. He's filling out, and he has no problem with the area that did not grow. Follicles on the top of his head are clearly covered by the remaining part of his hair. So we're not really even certain how much follicle growth we're getting. His hair is so thick up there, we're not really seeing much, and we won't until spring to see how that's recovered. But in retirement, we're getting a similar behavior, but a little bit more subdued. Not so much following, much more chin resting, much more physical posturing, where they're circling each other, doing a little bit of growling, threat display, and posturing. And again, Shadow is the master of the chin rest, so he's doing that to prove his point. And as we said, I think in last week's logs, Shadow wasn't feeling very well, so Malik really gained a lot of status on him, and now Shadow's working pretty hard to get that back. So we're seeing a lot, but this is Malik facing us, and as soon as Shadow sniffs the anal scent glands, Malik drops his tail. Notice that Shadow's not holding his tail in an extremely high posture. Actually, it's quite lower than Malik. But as he goes into the following, you see Malik's ears go back, Shadow's ears prick forward, and even though Malik's tail is higher, it does appear that Malik's a little bit more intimidated by it. So again, sometimes this is stimulated by wolf care, sometimes it's stimulated by the main pack, meaning activity going on in the main pack. But it's certainly something that we see, and when we observe wolf care, or we go in for wolf care, we give them plenty of attention so that if there is any issues that we can make sure everybody's socially engaged, and give them plenty of time to sniff us, because we've just been with other wolves, and we have to make sure that we give them ample time to greet and to get familiar with everything that we're about. And I believe also that we had just unloaded some deer, so we were smelling exceptionally well that day. So that's what's going on in retirement. Other than that, you hear a lot of the raven noise, and we've been seeing a lot of raven activity. As we feed a lot of scraps, we do notice the ravens are increasing, and that raven activity sometimes results in a dead raven. So in this clip, we thought we'd end the YouTube just showing what happens when Oscar comes back from an overnight. And Oscar had been overnight with one of the staff, and certainly the wolves get excited to see him. He's been gone for a while, and you can see he and Grizzer having some social interaction through the fence. And now that Oscar has a wider area, meaning the Working for Wolves crew built a new gate system that allows him a little bit more access towards the back. And you can see him, again, socially engaging, a little bit of excitability on Oscar's part. That means a little bit more barking, and just, because he's been gone overnight, he's got to go greet him. But what's interesting is Grizzer's response. Seeing Grizzer kind of pawing at him, a real significant tail wag. And then Grizzer goes into a roll for him. Again, that's a pretty strong greeting response. So we, again, want to report everybody's doing well. We are anxiously awaiting for some snow, and hopefully everyone enjoys the fall weather that we have. So thanks for watching.